Since the release of its first season in December of last year, it didn't take long for Station 11 to become the biggest title of HBO Max. And as it turns out, fans of The Last of Us franchise believe a lot can be learned from this apocalyptic drama. But what are some of the suggestions Neil Druckmann might be using? And would these work for the show? For all this and more, stay tuned. But first, a reminder about our brand new giveaway. We're giving away the new iPad Pro or the new iMac Pro. The choice is yours. All you have to do is watch the full video, leave a like, comment the keyword hidden in the video, and make sure you're subscribed. It's that simple. First of all, let's talk about the similarities between Station 11 and The Last of Us. For those of you who don't know, The Last of Us is a video game based on the intricate relationship between Joel and Ellie, forced together in a post-apocalyptic world plagued by zombies. Joel is tasked with escorting Ellie to a group known as the Fireflies, who will no doubt use her immunity against the dangerous virus to create a vaccine for those who haven't perished, and become members of the Walking Dead. Although the game has more than enough action to keep the most ADD of us in our chairs, The Last of Us succeeds in another element though. We are of course talking about its story and exploration of the relationship between Joel and Ellie. You see, Joel lost his own daughter when the outbreak first began, and while his relationship with Ellie starts off rocky at best, players watched in awe as the two began to warm up to one another until they formed their very own family unit. Station 11, on the other hand, doesn't focus on action or violence at all. It also explores the post-apocalyptic world brought into existence by the spread of a dangerous virus. But rather than placing emphasis on the dangers present in the new world, it shows how hopeful Kirsten and the rest of the traveling symphony are. Using the power of acting, they travel from place to place, invigorating those around. But her history with Jeevan is very similar to what we see from Joel and Ellie. In fact, this is where we find the first suggestion fans have been making. For The Last of Us to become an acceptable new show to fans of the already beloved franchise, the relationship between Joel and Ellie has to be perfect. And while Neil Druckmann has a lot to pull from when it comes to the two games he has already created under the franchise name, it must be said that cinema is a lot different from video games. The Last of Us is considered to be one of the greatest franchises ever made because of its intricate story and brilliant chemistry between Joel and Ellie, something that is somewhat of an outlier in today's constant regurgitation of yearly video game type. In the year of television, however, the story is by far the most important aspect of a show. In other words, expectations are a lot higher, and hype is not exactly on the side of the anticipated show. This is why Station 11 is a great place for Neil Druckmann to look when it comes to ensuring that his directed chemistry between Joel and Ellie is appropriate for television screens around the world. As we mentioned earlier, the relationship between Kirsten and Jeevan is pretty similar in her early years when the outbreak first begins. Sure, there aren't zombies running around, but Jeevan quickly steps in as a father figure to Kirsten, who is unfortunately left on her own due to unforeseen circumstances. And while their relationship is rocky at first, the love they later come to share can't be denied. We also think the realistic feeling of Station 11 should be incorporated, but this has more to do with the overall vibe of the show than the content it's dealing with. You see, as real as The Last of Us felt while playing and exploring the emotions of Joel and Ellie, there were certain aspects that went beyond the realm of possibilities. The world is inhabited by different species of brain-eating zombies so by realism, we don't mean that The Last of Us should get rid of its undead counterparts. In fact, it's what makes the post-apocalyptic world of the franchise so terrifying in the first place. What we do think the show should borrow from Station 11, though, is the overall feeling of realism present in the franchise. When watching the series for the first time, we thought it felt incredibly real because its plot was very similar to what we are currently experiencing with the spread of COVID-19. But as we focused on that feeling more, we came to realize that this was just an added benefit. True realism presented by Station 11 actually has more to do with the writing of the show than anything else. The character we come to love also transcend the usual television trope. Rather than having just one aspect of themselves explored, each character feels intricate in the way they feel and come across. And to a large extent, this is what we need to see from The Last of Us. It needs to feel as real as the games. Speaking of, it's important for The Last of Us to not lose focus on the true enemy, which is pretty easy when you have monstrous creatures roaming around trying trying to consume your flesh, but something we came to learn from playing both games is that in the world of The Last of Us, the zombies aren't the big bads of the franchise. Rather, it's humanity who has fallen from grace and are somewhat willing to do anything in an effort to survive. In Station 11, we see this from the mind of the Prophet, who is undoubtedly behind some of the greatest character manipulation in the history of television. Using his power over those who believe in his voice, he directs his understudies to do his bidding, becoming a dictator of sorts who is capable of insatiable evil. What makes the conduct of human beings worse is that we know we have the capability to do good. So when we choose to do bad things, these actions are no doubt worse than a zombie following its primitive drive. So we really hope Neil Druckmann doesn't fail in bringing the franchise to our television screens by placing the emphasis on the zombies. Even the side characters of the video game are incredible, with some of the most emotional experiences coming from reading letters left by corpses, describing their last few moments in the world. And while we think it would be pretty easy to make The Last of Us suitable for the horror genre, it's best left as an action drama that explores the character above all else. And when it comes to world building, Station 11 has become the pinnacle of success. It may be true that the underlying plot of the show and its similarity to our current situation did a lot to build the world of the show, but at the center of Station 11 is a fantastic post-apocalyptic universe that's littered with explorable monuments of every sort. And that's where The Last of Us shined brighter than anything else in the gaming industry. The best parts of the video games weren't when Joel and Ellie were battling through hordes of zombies, but rather those chapters when the two characters were sneaking through large dystopian towns with the fear that dangers present within would hear them. The slow tension of these scenes had players looking in every direction in an attempt to get the drop of an enemy before the enemy did the same on them, which resulted in them paying attention to the broader world. Every now and then you'd see the symbol of the fireflies plastered on a wall, along with a couple of note or two describing what had happened in the town you were at the time exploring. In fact, one of the greatest romance stories ever told can be found in The Last of Us. And what makes it so incredible is the fact that it's implied rather than expressed. Neil Druckmann needs to use Station 11 as a prime example of how to achieve this brilliance in television, as The Last of Us wouldn't be the same without this type of storytelling. And last but not least, we need to see some moments when the series finally arrives. What do we mean by moments though? Well, in the truest sense of the word, we need to be swept up in the show at some point and lose track of the fact that we are actually watching characters rather than people. In the first video game, a great moment took place between Joel and Ellie when they stumbled upon a tower of giraffes. After spending the day running from supernatural hunters and almost dying at their hands, this was a moment that really pulled at the heartstrings of players. Finally, the duo were able to relax and experience something enjoyable from the world. In the same sense, Station 11 presented us with similar moments, but this time suited for television. And Neil Druckmann would be a fool to not make use of these to see just how successful The Last of Us can be when late 2022 comes around. And there you have it, just some of the things The Last of Us can learn from Station 11. What do you think Neil Druckmann should be paying attention to them? And are you excited for the release of the show? Be sure to let us know in the comments section down below.